Okay, it's still Monday, August 29th, 2022. I'm still Larissa. So, get to reading some more here. I was so worried. Got to thinking, I slept all last night with my headphones on, which I usually do because I usually listen to thunderstorms or hurricanes or ocean waves or some such thing to sleep, usually. That's what I listen to. And it's helpful. But last night I listened to a broadcast, of getting ready to shoot that rocket, and then it was just like, I was like, oh gosh. But then I was all worried, like, did anybody get hurt? Because I didn't hear the explosion. I didn't hear it. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. Just meant that it wasn't. I didn't hear it. It wasn't on what I was listening to. So I'm like, did anybody get hurt? And I was all worried. Nobody got hurt. They said just feelings got hurt. Feelings. So my arm and the injury that I have in my arm. We're going to get to Mr. Rushdie's book. We're going to. I think about him in the hospital, and I hope he's getting better medical care than what I get around here. I hope so. I do hope so. Oh, my bandana, color of my bandana never means anything. It just matches my outfit, so don't anybody get up in arms about actually wearing my colors. No, it's just a bandana on my head. It's just my babushka, just my do-rag. Keep my hairs out of my face. Anyway, had issue at Dominican Hospital, which I've talked about before, right? They didn't provide me with any medical care. I got 2 lidocaine patches and treated like garbage, right? And then they wouldn't let me see my x-rays, and I never saw a doctor, so I don't even know if they actually even really took x-rays, right? But I know my insurance was charged for it, right? And they won't tell me the names of anybody, supposedly the names of these medical professionals they say I saw, right? So, and they keep asking me for money after they told us we were paying full price, right? We paid in full in the emergency room before we left, right? Hair in my lip gloss. That's what they told us. And so we paid what they asked us for, and then I continue to ask us for more, and I'm just saying no, no more. So I reported them, sent a letter to the department, to the California Medical Board, Licensing Board, because I want to know who these medical professionals are that I supposedly saw. They won't tell me. So the medical board says, Dear Larissa DeRoog, this is to acknowledge the receipt of your correspondence as the licensing agency responsible for reviewing complaints against physicians and surgeons, licensed midwives, podiatrists in California. The board is only authorized to take action against an individual it finds in violation of the Medical Practice Act and unlicensed individuals in violation of Business and Professional Code Section 2052. Upon receipt of your complaint, a thorough review was conducted. Your complaint does not fall within the board's jurisdiction. Therefore, your complaint is being forwarded to the California Department of Public Health, shown below for any action they may deem appropriate. Thank you for contacting the board. Sincerely, Central Complaint Unit, Medical Board of California. And so then they sent one. I got a letter also from the California Department of Public Health. I'm not a medical professional. I don't claim to be a medical professional. I'm a Reiki practitioner, and that is not the same thing. And I always tell everybody that I've ever seen, go see a real doctor. So, nobody can say nothing about me. This came with Gavin Newsom's stamp up in the corner, as well as some Dr. Aragon, Director and State Public Health Officer, State of California Health and Human Services Agency. Dear Ms. DeRoog, Facility, Dominican Hospital, complaint number. I'm not putting out my complaint number for you to look at. The purpose of this letter is to inform you that this office is in receipt of your complaint regarding the above-named facility. The Licensing and Certification Program, LNC, is responsible for the licensing and certification of health facilities and the investigation of complaints. Before LNC can cite a facility for a violation of a state or federal regulation, there must be sufficient factual evidence that a violation did in fact occur. LNC must verify the violation through direct observation, interviews, or review of documents. If you have additional information that might affect the outcome, blah, 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 or if you have questions, please contact blah, 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 letter. Sincerely, somebody signed for, and it's just 2 letters, looks like, I don't even know what it says, for Mr. G. Wang, RN, District Manager, Licensing and Certification Program. So they're gonna look into it. How many women has that facility and others like it done this to? Charged for services that either weren't provided or overcharged for services that were provided. That's financial abuse. That's just like... And I've talked to at least 2 other people, strangers, in the community, who said that they're overcharged by Dominican hospital services all the time. And that they always have to fight with them and go back and forth between billing and their insurance. Always. And I've read that there have been a number of lawsuits. So, Dominican Hospital, now the state's involved. Mr. Rushdie, may you be getting much better service. Much, much better service than me. At whatever facility you are at. Haroun and the Sea of Stories, a novel by Salman Rushdie. Chapter 6. The Spy's Story. The capture of the Earthling spy created a buzz of horror in the pleasure garden, and when he identified himself as just a storyteller and a longtime subscriber to your own story water service, the general outrage only grew. Haroun started to force his way somewhat rudely through the crowd. Many eyes stared suspiciously at the second Earthling, also wearing a nightshirt, who was pushing and shoving and appeared to be in quite a state. Up the 7 terraces of the pleasure garden went Haroun, heading for the palace balcony, and on his way he heard many guppies muttering. Our own subscriber? How could he betray and help the Chupwalas? That poor Princess Batsheet. And what did she ever do except sing so badly it almost split our eardrums? And she's no oil painting either. But that's no excuse. You can't trust these Earthlings. That's the truth. Haroun, getting angrier by the minute, pushed even harder through the crowd. At his heels came If, the water genie, carrying, wait on, patience is a virtue, where's the fire? But Haroun would not be stopped. What do guppies do to spies anyhow? He yelled bad-temperedly at If. I suppose you rip out their fingernails one by one until they confess. Do you kill them slowly and painfully or quickly with 1,000,000 volts in an electric chair? The water genie and every other guppy who heard this outburst looked horrified and affronted. Where did you pick up such bloodthirstiness? If cried. Absurd and outrage. I never heard the like. Well then, what? Haroun insisted. I don't know, panted If as he struggled to keep up with the charging boy. We've never caught a spy before. Imagine that. Maybe we should scold him. Or make him stand in the corner. Or write, I must not spy 1,001 times, or is that too severe? Haroun did not answer because they had finally arrived under the palace balcony. Instead, he shouted at the top of his voice, Dad, what are you doing here? Every single guppy stared at him in amazement, and Rashid Khalifa, who was still shivering with cold, looked no less surprised. Oh, goodness, he said, shaking his head. Young Haroun, you surely are the most unexpected of boys. He's not a spy, Haroun shouted. He's my father, and the only thing wrong with him is that he's lost the gift of gab. That's right, said Rashid gloomily through chattering teeth. Go on, tell everyone, broadcast it to the whole world. Prince Bolo sent one of his pages to escort Haroun and If to the royal quarters in the heart of the palace. This page, who didn't look much older than Haroun, introduced himself as Blabbermouth, which, as it turned out, was a popular name in Gup for girls as well as boys. Blabbermouth was wearing one of the page's regulation rectangular tunics, on which Haroun observed the text of a story called Bolo and the Golden Fleece. That's strange, he said to himself. I thought that story was about someone else. As they made their way through the mazy passages of the royal palace of Gup, Haroun noted that many other pages of the royal guard were dressed in half-familiar stories. One page wore the tale of Bolo and the wonderful lamp, another Bolo and the 40 thieves. Then there was Bolo the sailor, Bolo and Juliet, Bolo and Wonderland. It was all very puzzling. But when Haroun asked Blabbermouth about the stories on the uniforms, the page only replied, "This is not the time for a discussion of fashion points. The dignitaries of Gup are waiting to question your father and you." It seemed to Haroun, however, that his question had embarrassed Blabbermouth, whose face had reddened noticeably. Well, all in good time, Haroun told himself. In the throne room of the palace, Rashid the storyteller was telling his story to Prince Bolo, General Khatib, the speaker, and the walrus. King Chatterjee had retired, feeling unwell, owing too much worrying about the bat cheat. He was wrapped in a blanket and had his feet in a bowl of steaming hot water. "How I have arrived in Gup, you will be wondering," he began, sipping a bowl of soup. "It is through certain dietary procedures." Haroun looked disbelieving, but the others were listening intently. As a frequent insomnia sufferer, Rashid went on, "I have learned that particular foodstuffs properly prepared will A. induce sleep, but also B. carry the sleeper wherever he may wish. It is a process known as rapture. And with sufficient skill, a person may choose to wake up in the place to which the dream takes him. To wake up, that is to say, inside the dream. I wished to travel to Gup, but owing to a slight directional miscalculation, I woke up in the twilight strip, dressed only in this inappropriate garb, and I froze. I confess it freely, I froze half to death." "What are these foodstuffs?" the walrus asked in a very interested voice. Rashid had recovered sufficiently to make his mysterious eyebrow face in reply. "Ah, but you must permit me my little secrets. Let us say moonberries, comet's tails, planet rings, washed down with a little primal soup. This soup, by the way, is very fine," he concluded on a different note. If they believe that story, they'll believe anything, Haroun thought. Now surely they'll lose their tempers and give him the 3rd degree. What actually happened was that Prince Bolo gave a loud, dashing, foolish laugh and thumped Rashid Khalifa on the back, making him blow hot soup out of his mouth. "A wit as well as an adventurer," he said. "Good show, fellow. I like you well." And with that he slapped his thigh. "What credulous souls these guppies are," Haroun mused, "and gentle too. If could have fought me for his disconnecting tool, but he made no attempt to get it, not even when I was out cold. And if they would sentence a real spy to no more than 1,001 lines, then they are peaceful people indeed. But if they have to fight a war, what then? They'll be completely hopeless, a lost cause." And here his thoughts tailed off because he had been on the verge of adding Khatum Shoot. In the twilight strip, Rashid Khalifa was saying, "I have seen bad things and heard worse. There is an encampment there of the Chupwala army. Such black tents wrapped in such a fanatical silence, because it's true what you have heard rumors of. The land of Chup has fallen under the power of the mystery of Bezaban, a cult of dumbness or muteness whose followers swear vows of lifelong silence to show their devotion. Yes, as I moved stealthily among the Chupwala's tent, I learnt this. In the old days, the cult master, Khatum Shud, preached hatred only towards stories and fancies and dreams, but now he has become more severe and opposes speech for any reason at all. In Chup City, the schools and law courts and theaters are all closed now, unable to operate because of the silence laws, and I heard it said that some wild devotees of the mystery work themselves up into great frenzies and sew their lips together with stout twine, so they die slowly of hunger and thirst, sacrificing themselves for the love of Bezaban." "But who or what is Bezaban?" Haroun burst out. "You may all know, but I don't have a clue." "Bezaban is a gigantic idol," Rashid told his son. "It is a colossus carved out of black ice and stands at the heart of Khatum Shud's fortress palace, the citadel of Chup. They say the idol has no tongue, but grins frightfully, showing its teeth, which are the size of houses." I think I wish I hadn't asked that, said Haroun. Chupwalla's soldiers are flitting around in that murky twilight. Rashid resumed his story. They wore long cloaks, through whose swirlings I sometimes caught sight of a cruel, dully glistening blade. But, sirs, you all know the stories about Chup. That is a place of shadows, of books that wear padlocks and tongues torn out, of secret conspiracies and poisoned rings. Why should I wait near that awful camp, with bare feet, blue and cold? I went towards the distant light on the horizon. As I walked, I came to Chattergee's wall, the wall of force, and, sirs, it is in bad repair. There are many holes, and movement through it is easily achieved. The Chupwallas know this already. I saw them across the wall. I witnessed the kidnapping of Batsheet with my own eyes. What's that you say? Shouted Bolo, leaping to his feet and striking a dashing and slightly foolish pose. Why have you waited so long to tell us? Sounds! Proceed, for pity's sake, proceed. When Bolo spoke like this, the other dignitaries all looked vaguely embarrassed and averted their eyes. I was struggling through the tangles of thorn bushes towards the ocean's rim, Rashid continued, when a swan boat of silver and gold approached. It was a young woman with long, long hair, wearing a circlet of gold and singing, please excuse me, the ugliest sounding song I have ever heard. In addition, her teeth, her nose— You needn't go on, the speaker of the chatterbox interrupted. That was Batsheet, all right. Batsheet! Batsheet! Lamented Bolo. Shall I never hear your sweet, sweet voice or gaze upon your delicate face again? What was she doing there? The walrus demanded. Those are dangerous parts. Oh, my goodness gracious. Well, here if— The water genie cleared his throat. Sirs, he said, maybe I don't know it, but the young people of Gup do go into the twilight strip just occasionally. That is to say, sometimes, that it is to say, most frequently, living in the sunlight all the time. They wish to see the stars, the earth, the other moon shining in the sky. It is a daredevil thing to do. And always there was, they thought, Chattergee's wall to protect them. Dark, my sirs, has its fascinations, mystery, strangeness, romance. Romance? Prince Bolo cried, drawing his sword. Foul water genie, shall I run you through? You dare to suggest that my Batsheet went there for love? No, If cried in panic. 1,000 apologies. I take it back. No offense. No need to worry on that score, Rashid quickly reassured Prince Bolo, who slowly replaced his sword in its scabbard. She was with her handmaidens and no one else. They were giggling about Chattergee's wall and wanting to go up to it and touch it. I want to know what it's like, this famous and invisible thing, I heard her say. If the eye can't see it, maybe the finger can feel, maybe the tongue can taste. Just then, a Chupwalla party, which, unknown to Batsheet or myself, had been watching the princess from the thorn bushes, having plainly come through a hole in the wall, seized the ladies and carried them off, kicking and shrieking, towards the tents of Chup. And what kind of man are you, sneered Prince Bolo rudely, that you stayed hidden and did nothing to save them from such a fate? The walrus, the speaker, and the general looked pained at the latest remark of the prince's, and Haroun got red in the face with rage. That prince, how dare he? He whispered fiercely to If it weren't for that sword, I know, the water genie whispered back. Princes can get like that, but don't worry. We don't really let him do anything important around here. What would you have preferred, Rashid? Answered Bolo with great dignity. That I, unarmed, dressed in a nightshirt, and half dead with cold, should have leapt like a romantic fool from my hiding place and got myself captured or killed? Then who would have brought you the news? Who would be able now to show you the way to Chupwalla encampment? You be a hero if you wish, Prince Bolo. Some people prefer good sense to heroism. You should apologize, Bolo, the speaker murmured, and with much swaggering and scowling, the prince finally did so. I was too sharp, he said. Truly, we are grateful for your news. There's one thing more, Rashid said. As the Chupwalla soldiers hauled the princess away, I heard them say a terrible thing. What thing? Bolo shouted, leaping about. They insulted her. The great feast of Bezaban is coming soon. Bezosban. One of them said, answered Rashid. Why not? On the day, offer our idols this guppy princess as a sacrifice. Oh my gosh, they're a sacrifice. We'll stitch up her lips and rename her the dumb princess, the Princess Kamosh. They all laughed. A hush fell over the throne room, and of course it was Bolo who spoke first. Now there is not a second to lose. Assemble the armed forces, all the pages, every chapter, every volume. To war! To war! For Batshit, only Batshit. For Batshit and the ocean, the walrus reminded him. Ah, yes, Prince Bolo huffily said. The ocean also, naturally, of course, very well. If you wish, Rashid, the storyteller said, I will lead you to the Chupwalla tents. Good man, Bolo shouted, thumping him on the back again. I did you wrong. You're a champion. If you're going, Haroun said to his father, I don't think you can leave me behind. Although the endless daylight of Gup gave Haroun the strange feeling that time was standing still, he realized he was exhausted. He found that he could not resist the slow drooping of his eyelids, and then his body was possessed by so magnificent a yawn that it attracted the attention of everyone in that august throne room. Rashid Khalifa asked if Haroun might be given a bed for the night, and so, in spite of his protests, I'm not in the least sleepy, really I'm not. Haroun was packed off for the night. The page, Blabbermouth, was told to lead him to his room. Blabbermouth led Haroun along corridors, up staircases, down staircases, along more corridors, through doorways, around corners, into courtyards, out of courtyards, onto balconies, and down corridors again. While they walked, the page, who seemed not to be able to contain the words a moment longer, unleashed an anti-Batshit tirade. Fool of a girl, Blabbermouth said. Now if my fiancée got herself kidnapped because she was crazy enough to go into the Twilight Strip just to go gooey over stars in the sky, even worse, to touch the stupid wall, for goodness sake, then don't imagine I'd start a war to go get her. I'd say good riddance, especially with her nose, her teeth. But no need to go into all that. I haven't even mentioned her singing. You wouldn't believe how horrible. And instead of letting her rot, we're all going to go in after her and probably get ourselves killed because we won't be able to see properly in the dark. Are we getting to my bedroom soon? Haroun inquired. Because I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. And these uniforms! You wanted to know about the uniforms? Blabbermouth continued, ignoring him, and continuing briskly on through halls, down spiral stairways, and along passageways. Well, whose idea do you think those were? Hers, obviously, Batshit's, and she decided to take the wardrobe of the pages of the royal household in hand, to make us into walking love letters. That was her first idea, and after an eternity of having to wear Kissy Poo and Cuddly Bunny and vomitous texts like that, she changed her mind and had all the greatest stories in the world rewritten as if her Bolo was the hero or something. So now instead of Aladdin and Ali Baba and Sinbad, it's Bolo, Bolo, Bolo. Can you imagine? People in Gup City laugh at us to our faces and say nothing of behind our backs. Then, with a triumphant grin, Blabbermouth stopped outside an extremely imposing doorway and announced, "Your bedroom," at which the doors burst open and guards seized both of them by the ears and told them to be on their way before they were thrown into the deepest dungeon in the palace because they had arrived at the bedchamber of King Chatterjee himself. "We're lost, aren't we?" Haroun said. "So it's a complicated place, and we're a little lost," Blabbermouth admitted. "But aren't we having a nice chat?" This remark so exasperated Haroun that in his exhaustion he swung an arm loosely at Blabbermouth's head, catching the page by surprise and knocking off the maroon velvet cap on his head, on her head, that is to say, because as the cap fell to the ground, a great torrent of shiny black hair cascaded down over Blabbermouth's shoulders. "What did you do that for?" wailed the page. "Now you've spoiled everything." "You're a girl," Haroun said, a little obviously. "Shh!" hissed Blabbermouth, stuffing her hair back under her cap. "You want to get me the sack or what?" She dragged Haroun into a little alcove and drew a curtain to screen them from view. "You think it's easy for a girl to get a job like this? Don't you know girls have to fool people every day of their lives if they want to get anywhere? You probably had your whole life handed you on a plate, probably got a whole mouthful of silver spoons, but some of us have to fight." "You mean that just because you're a girl, you aren't allowed to be a page?" Haroun asked sleepily. "I suppose you only do what you're told," Blabbermouth hotly rejoined. "I suppose you always eat up all the food on your plate, even the cauliflower. I suppose you—" "At least I could do something perfectly simple, like showing someone where their bedroom is," Haroun butted in. Blabbermouth suddenly gave a broad, wicked grin. "I suppose you always go to bed when you're told to," she said, "and you wouldn't be at all interested in going up on the palace roof through this secret passage right here." And so, after Blabbermouth had pushed the button hidden in an elaborately carved wooden panel on one of the alcove's curved walls, and after they had climbed the staircase that came into view when the panel slid away, Haroun sat on the flat roof of the palace in what was, of course, still dazzling sunshine, and gazed out at the view of the land of Gup, and of the pleasure garden in which preparations for war were being made, and of the lagoon in which a great flotilla of mechanical birds was assembling, and out across the endangered ocean of streams of story. Haroun realized quite suddenly that he had never felt more completely alive in his life, even if he was ready to drop with fatigue. And at the same exact moment, without a word, Blabbermouth took 3 soft balls made of golden silk from one of her pockets, tossed them into the air so that they caught the sunlight, and began to juggle. Crafty little wench. She juggled behind her back, over and under her leg, with her eyes closed and lying down, until Haroun was speechless with admiration, and every so often she'd throw all the balls high into the air, reach into her pockets, and produce more of the soft golden spheres, until she was juggling 9 balls, then 10, then 11, and every time Haroun thought she can't possibly keep them all up, she'd add even more balls to her whirling galaxy of soft silken suns. It occurred to Haroun that Blabbermouth's juggling reminded him of the greatest performances given by his father, Rashid Khalifa, the Shah of Blah. "I always thought storytelling was like juggling," he finally found the voice to say. "You keep a lot of different tails in the air and juggle them up and down, and if you're good, you don't drop any. So maybe juggling is a kind of storytelling, too." Blabbermouth shrugged, caught up all her golden balls, and tucked them away in her pockets. "I don't know anything about that," she said. "I just wanted you to know who you were dealing with here." Haroun woke up many hours later in a darkened room. They had finally found his bedroom after asking another page for help, and he had fallen asleep 5 seconds after Blabbermouth drew the heavy curtains and said goodnight. Someone was sitting on his chest. Someone's hands were around his throat, squeezing it tightly. It was Blabbermouth. "Rise and shine," she whispered menacingly. "And if you tell anyone about me, the next time you're asleep, I won't stop squeezing. You may be a good boy, but I can be a very bad girl indeed." "I won't tell, I promise," Haroun gasped, and Blabbermouth released her grip and grinned. "You're okay, Haroun Khalifa," she said. "Now get out of bed before I have to drag you out. Time to report for duty. There's an army in the pleasure garden getting ready to march." Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious, Mr. Rushdie. Goodness gracious. What is going to happen next? What is going to happen to Bat Cheap? I guess we're going to find out anyway.